Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Day 11 of hearings in Tranche 1, Phase 2 at the Undercover Policing Inquiry. My name is Neil Fernandez, and I am the hearings manager. For those of you in the virtual hearing room, please turn off both your camera and microphone unless you're invited to speak by the chairman, as Zoom will pick up on all noises and you will be on screen. I now hand over to the chairman, Sir John Mitting, to formally start proceedings. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Campbell.
Thank you, sir. I will begin by summarizing a statement given to the inquiry by the family of HN 300, cover name Jim Pickford. The statement was made in December 2017 during the course of the inquiry's anonymity proceedings, and is a joint statement by HN 300's second wife, to whom he was married during his deployment, and his two daughters. HN 300 is now deceased. Due to the nature of this statement, I'll be summarizing certain sections and reading others in full. The full statement will be published on the inquiry's website today. The statement begins with the family stating their concerns about the real name of HN 300 being disclosed through the inquiry. They note that HN 300 was given an assurance of anonymity by the police during his time in the SDS. They say, quote, "Before commencing deployment as an undercover police officer, our late ex-husband/father was given assurances that his identity, real and cover, would never be released. He operated under the belief that his identity, and therefore his personal safety and that of his family, a great many times. He also focused much of his time talking to us as children and adolescents about the importance of being vigilant, not divulging information, and maintaining a level of suspicion of any individual/organization seeking information, no matter how innocuous it seemed, through overt or covert means. While he would talk freely about his general police work, he never talked about his undercover work," end quote. They note that HN 300 did change his physical appearance for his deployment by growing his hair and beard, but that he would still be recognizable to the public due to his distinct facial features and mannerisms. When describing the impact that HN 300's deployment had on the family, they state that he would, quote, "disappear for long periods of time with no way of contacting him," and that, quote, "there were no emergency contact details given to his wife and no support during his absences." They continue, quote, "In order to safeguard his identity at home, he would park his cover vehicle away from the family home. He mostly returned home during the evening and at nighttime, with only occasional contact prior to his arrival. This caused considerable disruption to any sort of family routine, especially since both children were very young. In order to preserve anonymity and to avoid compromise of cover, there were no joint social engagements, i.e., no attendance to social gatherings or visits to friends or entertaining in the home as a married couple, leaving his wife extremely isolated whilst trying to bring up two small children. His wife had no family living in the UK, making her reliant upon close friends, which she was not able to speak with or seek support from at any time in relation to her family circumstances. Joint socializing with existing friends, including police officers, was minimal, so she had few sources of support to help her with the children whilst she brought them up effectively as a single parent. This resulted in her being socially vulnerable and alone. There was no support available to her from the special branch at any time," end quote. The family continues by describing a relationship that HN 300 engaged in while undercover. Quote, "During the time he was working undercover, he began a relationship with a woman whom his wife had become aware of. We do not know how or where they met. This, coupled with the great strain placed upon their marriage and family life by the various challenges and demands of his deployment, resulted in divorce from our family a year after his undercover deployment ended. He later married the woman. We all met her, and we children went on some family holidays with her and our dad, although we were very young at the time. This marriage also ended in divorce some years later. This woman then moved, and it has been impossible to locate/contact her, end quote. The family note that HN 300 had a child with this woman, the daughter's half-brother, but that he would have adopted a different surname when his mother remarried. With regards to HN 300's cover name, the family say, quote, "We do not know our ex-husband/dad's cover details because he never spoke about them. However, his later wife sometimes used to call him Jimmy, and that made us wonder if he used that as an alternative name," end quote. The statement continues by describing HN 300's later postings within the police, including details of public-facing roles. The family also note their concern about, quote, "unscrupulous individuals from HN 300's later life seeking to profit from his story should his real name be made public." The family note their concerns about the risk of members from infiltrated groups tracing them online or in person. They note that, quote, "We do not know for certain what groups he infiltrated whilst deployed, but we firmly believe he infiltrated at least 2 groups with a high level of risk/danger, one of which is still active in another form today. We remember how vigilant he made us be," end quote. The family continue by noting the impact of the inquiry on their well-being and describe the effect that HN 300's deployment had on their welfare. They state, quote, "This process has necessitated long searches within our past memories and experiences, which are of a time when situations were difficult and painful. For us children, it has been exceptionally difficult for us to hear of times when our mother was left alone and unsupported whilst trying her best to care for us. We have at times disagreed amongst ourselves about what the best course is, and that has added extra distress. It is also particularly stressful to anticipate what information may come to light regarding the father we thought we knew. We are aware of some aspects of his undercover work, which have been pieced together over time. However, our late ex-husband/father was incredibly stringent in maintaining secrecy. Therefore, we simply do not know the nature of information that may be uncovered as a result of the inquiry, and the fear of the unknown is causing us excessive worry. Throughout the years, we have all upheld our obligations of confidentiality in relation to the work he undertook. Consequently, the notion of this information being released leaves us with a feeling of betrayal, particularly in the case of his ex-wife, who was not given any support during the deployment or subsequently following the collapse of the marriage," end quote. The statement concludes by providing details of the risks the family believes they would be exposed to should HN 300's real name be released, and details of the family's current circumstances. The statement is signed by HN 300's former wife and dated the 22nd of December, 2017. Sir, I will now continue by reading the statement provided to the inquiry by the widow of HN 13. Due to the short length of this statement, I will read it in full. This is the first witness statement of the former wife of HN 13. "I have been asked to provide a witness statement for the purpose of assisting the undercover policing inquiry. I am the widow of HN 13, a former SDS officer. I make this statement in relation to the cover name used by my husband during his SDS deployment. The surname of the cover name used by my husband was Loader. I knew that it belonged to a deceased child from Wiltshire. I came to be aware of this part of my husband's cover name because he told me what it was. He also told me it was the surname of a deceased child. My husband never told me what first name or names he used. I do not remember the exact circumstances of how I came to be aware of this aspect of his cover name, or when I first became aware of it. It only had to be said once for it to be imprinted in my mind. I used to work in the West Country. I would often come across people with that surname through my work, and this reminded me of the cover name. It is not an unusual name in the West Country. And the statement is signed and dated the 20th of August, 2019. So that concludes the summary of the statements for today. In addition to publishing both of those documents, the inquiry will also be publishing documents related to the officer HN 296, cover name Jeff Wallace. This officer was deployed between mid-1975 and late 1978, primarily into the Hammersmith branch and the inner West London district of the International Socialists. The inquiry's analysis of those documents can be found at page 184 to 191 of Appendix 2 to Counsel to the Inquiry's opening statement for Tranche 1, Phase 2. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We will now have a 10-minute break while technical arrangements to permit us to hear the evidence of Celia Stubbs.
Good morning, everyone. We will now take a break. May I remind those in the virtual hearing room to remember to join your breakout rooms, please. The time is now 10:15, so we shall reconvene at 10:25 a.m. Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome back. I will now hand over to the Chairman to continue proceedings. Chairman.
Thank you. As at the beginning of every live evidential session, a recording is going to be played. If you're listening to it for the first time, please listen carefully. I am conducting this inquiry under a statute, the Inquiries Act 2005, which gives me the power to make orders regulating the conduct of the inquiry, including its hearings. In the exercise of that power, I have made a number of orders which affect what you may and may not do in the hearing rooms and after you leave them. Breach of any of the orders is a serious matter and may have serious consequences for you. If I am satisfied that a person may have breached an order, I have the power to certify the matter to the High Court, which will investigate and deal with it as if it had been a contempt of that court. If satisfied that a breach has occurred and merits the imposition of a penalty, the High Court may impose a severe sanction on the person in breach, including a fine, imprisonment for up to 2 years, and sequestration of their assets. Evidence is going to be given live over screens in the hearing rooms. It is strictly prohibited to photograph or record what is shown on the screens or to record what is said by a witness or anyone else in the hearing rooms. You may bring your mobile telephone into the hearing rooms, but you may not use it for any of those purposes. You may use it silently for any other purpose. In particular, you may transmit your account of what you have seen and heard in a hearing room to any other person, but only once at least 10 minutes have elapsed since the event which you are describing took place. This restriction has a purpose. In the course of the inquiry, I have made orders prohibiting the public disclosure of information, for example, about the identity of a person for a variety of reasons. These orders must be upheld. It is inevitable that whether by accident or design, information which I have ordered should not be publicly disclosed will sometimes be disclosed in a hearing. If and when that happens, I will immediately suspend the hearing and make an order prohibiting further disclosure of the information outside the hearing rooms. The consequence will be that no further disclosure of that information may be made by mobile telephone or other portable electronic device from within the hearing room or by any means outside it. I am sorry if you find this message alarming. It is not intended to be. Its purpose is simply to ensure that everyone knows the rules which must apply if I am to hear the evidence which I need to enable me to get to the truth about undercover policing. You, as members of the public, are entitled to hear the same public evidence as I will hear and to reach your own conclusions about it. The inquiry team will do their best to ensure that you can. If you have any doubt about the terms of this message or what you may or may not do, you should not hesitate to ask one of them, and with my help if necessary, they will provide you with the answer. Ms. Stubbs, do you wish to affirm or to be sworn?
To affirm, please.
And may the words of affirmation be spoken to, please.
Yes.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, Ms. Stubbs. Can you see and hear me?
Yes, I can.
I understand that you would like to affirm.
Yes.
Thank you. Please repeat after me. I do solemnly, sincerely, and truly
I do solemnly, sincerely, and truly
declare and affirm that the evidence I shall give
that the evidence I shall give
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
Thank you, Ms. Stubbs. Chairman?
Thank you. Ms. Wilkinson, I understand we're going to have a break at about 11:45. If you could bear that in mind when asking your questions, that'd be great.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Stubbs, could you give us your full name, please?
Celia Veronica Stubbs.
And I think this morning you'd like me to refer to you as Ms. Stubbs. Is that right?
Yes, thank you.
We'll be talking a lot about your partner, Blair Peach. Would you like me to refer to him as Mr. Peach, or with his full name or his Christian name?
Maybe Blair Peach.
I shall do so. Ms. Stubbs, you made a statement for the inquiry dated the 16th of January 2021, and that is before us today. Is that true and correct in its contents to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, that includes the supplement, doesn't it?
It does. That's the supplemented version where you made any amendments you wished, and you appended 2 exhibits as well. Now, that statement in its supplemented form is going to be published on our website today with the exhibits that you appended. And so that will be the body and background of your evidence already published. So that will all be taken into account. So this morning, I'll be highlighting some key features, but we won't be reading through every part of your witness statement. Is that okay?
Yes.
Ms. Stubbs, you are here today to help us with evidence in relation to particularly the late 1970s for the purposes of this tranche today, because you and your partner, Blair Peach, were both members at that stage in the late 70s of the Socialist Workers' Party, and you both attended an anti-National Front demonstration outside Southall Town Hall on the 23rd of April 1979, when tragically your partner was killed. Can you help us a little with your relationship? How long had you been in a relationship with Blair Peach by the time of these events that we'll be concentrating on today?
My ex-husband and I spent 3 years in New Zealand, as he had a contract he was a secondary school teacher. He had a contract to teach there for 3 years. And we first met Blair when he was at high school. And then when he went on his first year at university, and then we returned to England. Blair visited us in England with his friend, went back and then came back for good. And at that time I was separated and later divorced from my husband. So that was 1970. So I first met him in,
Before 1970.
I met him about 1962, yes, 1963. And I've lived with him since the end of 1971.
And so he was your long-term partner by 1979. And did you have children already by then from your first marriage?
Yes, I had 2 daughters.
Did he help in your care of them?
Yes, he did.
Now, as we will hear, the tragic events of the 23rd of April 1979 ignited immense strength of feeling, and you have ever since been part of campaigns that have flowed from that event. Most notably, you have campaigned for a public inquiry to be held into Blair Peach's death so that those responsible can be held to account. You have campaigned for greater accountability in policing generally, and you've been involved in organisations supporting miscarriages of justice cases, for example, through the Hackney Community Defence Association and the Colin Roach Centre. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
And we'll see that although your name appears a couple of times in a couple of reports that have been submitted by SDS officers before the death of your partner, the vast majority of the reports that have been provided to you from the undercover officers provided in your pack for this tranche have been to do with the Blair Peach campaign and events that took place after April 1979, rather than in your personal capacity in any other way. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I do, although I have discovered through reading through statements that Blair and I both had registry files. I think mine was 1974-75 and Blair's was opened in 1978, and I haven't had sight of either of these registry files. So I feel that there's documents that I haven't seen that might have been helpful.
Yes.
I had great difficulty writing my first statement because I had to write it by the 31st of January 2020, and I hadn't seen any statements at all. I'd only seen quite faded copies of police statements about meetings.
Well, we've now got your statement that is informed by the reports that you have seen.
Yes,
dated
not the registry reports.
2021, yes. Well, the registry file reference, the RF reference, I think you're referring to, we can see in I think the very first report, where you can tell that the middle number is the 74 figure, which I think is what's assisted your reference to that. And of course, the RF files are held by Special Branch generally, and we're here today focusing on the SDS, which was a fragment of that. So that's what we're dealing with, the undercover reporting, rather than any broader policing in respect of Special Branch generally. So that's what we're going to focus on for now. As far as undercover policing is concerned, and the reports that you've seen that have been generated by undercover officers, you consider, I think you say in your statement, this to be an abuse of police surveillance powers, because you consider these undercover officers to have been reporting information back to the Metropolitan Police to protect the police from facing justice. Is that what you say in your statement?
Yes, that's right. I just don't understand why I was spied upon, what was the purpose. And I certainly like to know how it's going to be used, how long it will be kept, and why they did it. We
need now to look, I think, at the context of what was going on in the 70s and the political your political activity and involvement in any activism, and that of your partner, and what was generally going on as far as the feelings in the country and the general elections and that sort of thing. So if we can, let's just go back, please, if we can, to the early 70s. Is it right that you became a member of the International Socialists in 1972?
Yes, that's right.
What were the core aims of the International Socialists then?
They believed very much the struggle to achieve socialism was through the class struggle, and that we had to build a large working class base. Emphasis was on building rank and file. We had a weekly newspaper, Socialist Worker, which we sold in public places every week, so we were able to talk to members of the public about our aims and encourage them to come to the public meetings we held. We also sold outside factories and places of work. I remember selling outside the metal box factory in Hackney when it doesn't exist anymore, when it was open. We had public meetings. We had private meetings open just to members only, where we discussed policy and actions. We opposed racism in all its facets, and we went to demonstrations and supported other workers' struggles, and also worked in our trade union that work.
What sort of actions, you referred to, you would discuss policy and actions, what sort of actions would your group take that you were a member of?
Well, maybe one example is the National Front had quite a large power base in the 1970s in East London, where we lived. I was a member of the Hackney branch of IS. There were also two other branches in Hackney, one in Stoke Newington and one in Clapton. I remember discussing one action when the National Front had their headquarters in South Hackney, and I remember we discussed about contacting the council. It was a council building which they'd rented to hope to get that closed. In fact, in the end, we actually were able to do that in 1978. And also, we discussed round Brick Lane, the National Front used to sell their newspaper on a Sunday. And I remember going down there to oppose them. There were always quite a lot, and a lot of police. So that's...
How would you oppose them if they, just to help us understand the context on the ground, if they were selling their newspapers, in what way were you demonstrating your opposition?
They chose Brick Lane because there was a very large Bangladeshi community that lived and worked down there. They were incredibly racist and abusive. Their newspaper they used to sell was really offensive. And we went down to oppose them. Yes,
what did you do when you were there? Did you?
One level, it was usually around about every Sunday about 11, between about 11 and 2 o'clock, and there was always a large police presence. So it was really, while trying to, well, in fact, you couldn't actually talk to them, but to actually trying to talk to people there who might be influenced by them, to try and oppose them in that way. And also there was quite a lot of, obviously, a lot of shouting. And
so would you chant some slogans? Would you carry any banners at that point, or was it just?
Yes, we had banners and we had our newspaper.
Were there any confrontations? Were there any physical confrontations when you would oppose these newspapers?
No, not physical.
I think in terms of the campaign you referenced, or the efforts to make sure that the National Front headquarters in Hackney office effectively was closed down, I think your partner Blair Peach was involved in that effort as well with you, is that right?
Yes, very much so. He was in the National Union of Teachers, a very fervent trade unionist. And in the last year of his life, he was president of East London Teachers Association. And we were unions at that time. Our unions were, with the trades councils. We were affiliated to Tower Hamlets and Hackney Trades Councils. And so, part of our work was, in fact, speaking to them as well.
So you were a member of the International Socialists, which then in 1977 effectively naturally renamed the Socialist Workers' Party.
Yes.
Was that so that it could become a more electable party and become more involved in the voting system? Yes,
I honestly can't exactly remember because we felt that the parliamentary democracy that we had wasn't particularly democratic at all, but it was to make it more sort of open to maybe the general public, yes, who might not have been interested in left-wing politics. That's right, yes. I just wanted to correct you and say, well, I don't know if you'd said it, but in fact, Blair didn't join the Socialist Workers' Party till I think it was about 1977 or 78.
I hadn't given a date, but I'd said late 70s because I'd noted in your statement you had said 1977.
Yes.
What he was a part of, and I think a member of, was one of the significant campaigns that was fronted by the International Socialists, which was the Anti-Nazi League.
That's right.
And I think he was a member of that from 1975. Were you also a member of that?
Yes, I was, yes.
And that was launched by the, as it was, the IS, and then maintained through the SWP in response, as you've mentioned, to the growth of the National Front in the 1970s, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. I think there was also, from that also came Rock Against Racism, and that was founded by a musician after remarks that Eric Clapton made at a concert venue. And also Dave Widgery, who was he was a doctor in Tower Hamlets, and he was in the IS, then SWP, and he was very involved in that side of it. But it was also a mainstream organization, although it was launched by the IS. The idea was also that it would attract younger people, and maybe people who wouldn't have joined the SWP, but would have joined the Anti-Nazi League. And I think it really took off, the Anti-Nazi League and Rock Against Racism. And
that was, it took off as effectively, so did this growth in noise and support for the National Front. And is it right that by the local elections in May 1976, there had been incredibly high numbers of votes for the National Front, particularly in Leicester, and there were increasing numbers of National Front protests taking place and racist attacks occurring?
Yes, and I believe the National Front won a council seat in the Isle of Dogs in Tower Hamlets in the local elections.
Can we have
very worrying, yes.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Yes, so that was the particular concern that was being met or was the focus of the Anti-Nazi League in particular, and other groups, like you say, of Rock Against Racism.
Yes.
Could I ask you now, we'll have a look at two reports that are dated in 1976. In fact, both of them dated in August 1976. Ms. Stubbs, I know you have a hard copy bundle. I'm going to ask for them to come up on the screen, but the chairman also has a hard copy bundle, so I'll reference the tab numbers as well as the unique identifying code. This is behind tab 1, and it's report UCPI 50-10769. It will come up on screen, and if you need it to be any bigger, then please just say so. Thank you. This we can see is a report about, on the left-hand side, the International Socialists, and we see the date is the 4th of August 1976. We can see that this was a meeting at paragraph 2. It was a meeting that had taken place on the 22nd of July 1976. And we can see also from paragraph 2 that it was taking place at Stoke Newington Town Hall. Just at the bottom of paragraph 2, we can see that approximately 250 people had attended. Was that sort of number of people in attendance a common feature of meetings of the IS in 1976, or was that unusually high?
I think it was unusually high, but also because the Hackney Community Relations Council was involved in the meeting, having its first meeting. And I think that's what increased the numbers.
If we can now have a look further down the screen at paragraph 4, I'm going to read from about halfway along paragraph 4, just to get an idea of what was taking place. There's a gentleman that's referenced Kodikara. In fact, I'll read the whole paragraph out for context. Kodikara and 2 other speakers, unidentified, delivered impassioned speeches on racialism generally, with no interference from the floor. It was only when a member of the National Front decided that he wished to make a comment during question time that trouble occurred. The man was pounced on by a group of stewards and ejected from the assembly room amid a shower of fists and invective. A timely hoax bomb call to the town hall finally brought the meeting to a close at about 10:15 p.m. Next paragraph. It was at this point that several members of the National Front appeared from the Rose and Crown public house opposite the town hall and began taunting both those leaving the meeting and members of the International Socialists who were waiting outside. This provoked a sharp interchange of slogan chanting, after which all members of the left-wing groups present decided to retreat en masse along Stoke Newington Church Street towards the High Street. This group of about 60 persons was followed at a distance by several members of the National Front until it split up into small groups and dispersed quietly. Ms. Stubbs, does that accord with, that can be taken down off the screen now. Does that accord with the your recollections of the level of animosity and the impact on public disorder that was regularly occurring at meetings in 1976 onwards?
There were some meetings like that. Certainly, you know, not all. I can only remember one other one somewhere, I think, round East Ham, that was similar. It's interesting at the end, though, that it said dispersed quietly. I mean, and there was no, I don't think anyone was arrested. I mean, my memory of that meeting, I think, is only because I can't really remember what was talked about, but I do remember this person being ejected from the hall. And I think it's because there was a crowd of National Front people outside, and it's sort of very intimidating and frightening. And so that's why we dispersed altogether.
And do you, your recollection, you say in your statement, of the activities of IS and the Socialist Workers' Party was that violence was not part of the agenda and was not anticipated. And do we see in that example of the report, the group retreating as a
yes.
Instead of confronting?
Yes. Yes, I mean, you know, I do remember unprovoked attacks, and, you know, of course, members of the left were often arrested. You know, I remember that, but it wasn't, we certainly didn't go out to do that. You know, we didn't go to provoke.
Can we have a look at the other report from 1976 that's in the bundle? This is tab 2. The UCPI number is 5010779, please. The report is dated again the 4th of August 1976, but we can see at paragraph 2, this is actually a report of a meeting that had taken place a few days after the last one, on Monday the 26th of July 1976. And we see at the end of paragraph 2 that this was attended by 23 persons, again about the International Socialists. Is that perhaps a more typical number of people that would attend regularly?
Yes.
Paragraph 3, I will read out. The meeting dealt exclusively with questions raised at the National Conference of the International Socialists, and most of the evening was taken up with boring speeches from Privacy and Privacy, the 2 delegates, to the national conference. Now, this was a report being submitted by an SDS officer back to his superiors. Can you just help us with what the content would have been that was being described there as boring speeches?
I'm afraid I can't remember.
Paragraph 4. Little of any interest to Special Branch was discussed during the session of questions from the floor, except that Privacy accepted the role of distributor within the Inner East London district of The Worker, and also the role of Irish coordinator for the district. Privacy suggested a programme of anti-army recruiting within the district, especially outside army careers information offices. This was met with stern approval from Privacy, who promised to act upon this suggestion. So do we see from this report that what appears to be of interest, using the expression in the report, to Special Branch, doesn't appear to be the content of the speeches, but rather here, in this example, the mechanisms of where the newspaper might be being distributed and what events are coming up that are going to take place in public places outside here, for example, army offices.
Yes, this person she was also a member of TOM, Troops Out movement, and we often shared meetings and supported each other. Yes, and that's why I know the policy was to talk to young men and women who were thinking about signing up for the armed services. Yes, to talk to them about it. And also, I just wanted to go back to the boring. This was probably, I mean, we were probably talking about policy and that sort of thing, and maybe, you know, an undercover officer, obviously, although he was pretending to be an IS, he wasn't there because of his political beliefs, and so might have found it rather boring.
Yes, and what we do see by that description is the, as we say, the interest there from the policing perspective, which is, on the face of this example, more to do with what are the actions that are to be taken by the group, what perhaps where the scope for disorder might arise.
Except he didn't know that we were going to talk about what Troops Out movement might be doing.
The SDS's proclaimed purpose in its early days was to assist with the policing of public events and demonstrations, as we understand is the justification for the setting up of the unit. And so intelligence about who was going to be attending what events and where was obviously going to be something that would be of interest to this particular unit. Obviously, one of those events that took place in 1979 was the demonstration that took place at Southall Town Hall, which had the tragic consequences that it did. And so on the face of it, undercover policing and advance information about demonstrations like that is something that the SDS would have been interested in, and how to police events that they know are coming up was something that the SDS ought to be interested in. And indeed, what policing to deploy on the streets would also have been a consideration to have been factored in. And we know, and you can help us with the policing that was used at that event in 1979. So can we now move, if we may, to that year? And can we start by looking at tab 3 in your bundle and the chairman's bundle? And on the screen, please, can we have report UCPI 5021207. Ms. Stubbs, I know that you've made particular reference to this report in your statement, and if I may, I'll use this as the bedrock to deal with the topic and then ask for your personal recollections, if I may deal with it in that way. This is a report dated the 26th of April 1979, so 3 days later than the demonstration itself. It's a report, we can't see it on the page at the moment because it's zoomed in, and we don't need to, but we'll see it in a second. It's a report about the Socialist Workers' Party. And it is reporting back from a meeting that had taken place literally the day after the Southall Town Hall events. It was on the 24th of April 1979. It was at a public house in northwest London, and it was taking place at 8 o'clock in the evening. There were about 60 people present. Paragraph 3 references Tony Cliff being the main speaker of the evening, but he declined to speak about the planned discussion because he was much more concerned to talk about the recent events. Now, I understand, Ms. Stubbs, you weren't present at this meeting for understandable reasons, but if I may, I would like to read out from halfway down that paragraph. So we might just need to scroll up on the screen, please. Thank you. In fact, I'll start from the third line down. He considered it far more important, thank you, technician, to discuss the battles with the police during the recent anti-National Front demonstrations. He concluded that the difference between Leicester on the 21st of April 1979 and Southall on the 23rd of April 1979 was in the preparation, planning and organisation done by the Anti-Nazi League. Because the ANL had provided local stewards and maps of the Leicester area, there had been a successful attack there on the police by about 200 demonstrators, high police injuries and a small number of arrests. On the other hand, at Southall, due to the lack of organisation and inadequate ANL stewarding, a lot of police had been injured. Many demonstrators had been arrested, and more importantly, many demonstrators had been badly injured with one death. Cliff therefore maintained that it was essential that any future anti-NF action should be better organised. Please scroll down. Many of the contributors from the floor then recounted their adventures during the demonstrations in Leicester and Southall and discussed instances of, quotes, extreme police brutality, end quotes. Paragraph 5, finally, it was announced that on Saturday, the 28th of April 1979 at Southall, there would be a peaceful march and vigil in memory of Blair Peach, who had died during the demonstrations on the 23rd of April. Ms. Stubbs, we can see from that report that there had been a demonstration in Leicester on the 21st of April, then 2 days later, a demonstration in Southall on the 23rd of April in 1979. And is this because the National Front had arranged to hold meetings, and in particular the 23rd of April, had arranged to hold a meeting at Southall Town Hall in the run-up to the general election in 1979. And despite much lobbying by many groups to persuade the local council not to allow the meeting to take place at that town hall, the National Front meeting had taken place there and it had gone ahead. And so it was felt that there ought to be a demonstration and a picket outside the Southall Town Hall so as to demonstrate the strength of feeling against the National Front on that occasion, the 23rd of April. And that was the event that both you and your partner attended. Is that right?
Yes.
With that context in mind, I know you were asked in your statement, in the build up to that event and that demonstration, had you attended any meetings discussing what activities should or should not take place on the 23rd of April?
Yes, can I just say something before?
Should we take this report now so we can see you, Ms. Stubbs? Thank you.
I wasn't at the meeting. Tony Cliff founded the International Socialists. It was very different to me. I wasn't at Leicester. I knew about what happened, but I think it's absolutely wrong to compare Leicester and Southall and to say because there wasn't enough A&L stewarding. I mean, Southall, the town in itself, was a very close-knit community. It had a very high percentage of different ethnic groupings and a real industrial base. At that time, there were lots of factories around Heathrow, and a lot of the residents worked there. So there was a very strong community, a very strong Indian Workers Association. There was over 5,000 people signed a petition to stop. The candidate standing didn't even live in Southall, and the National Front hadn't been known in Southall, but they were targeting towns with high Asian and Black population, not just Leicester, but Brixton, somewhere in southeast London, East London. They marched on the day before to Ealing Town Hall to hand the petition in. And they actually asked anti-racists from all over London to come and support them. But they provided their own leaflets and they called a half-day strike on Monday. Nearly all the factories closed down, the whole town closed down. And the plan was to have a peaceful demonstration outside the town hall. But literally by 1:30, the police, over 3,000 police had moved in with horses, and it was a town under siege. And they, with something which the National Council for Civil Liberties later said, the worst thing they did was to cordon off the town. Southall Town Hall was at a crossroads, and they closed off all those 4 roads so no one could move. And when the sit-down started, they started dragging just people who just felt very angry about the National Front, but weren't in the Anti-Nazi League, they weren't in IS. There was a really strong Southall youth movement because there'd been a tragic killing of white youths by a young Sikh, Gurdat Singh Jakar, when he was only 17. He was killed in 1976 in Southall. And the Indian Workers Association was very strong there. They also had an Asian MP, Piers, I can't remember his last name, sorry. So they asked anti-racists to come along, and we heard about it through our trade unions. The Anti-Nazi League were involved. There wasn't an IS branch in Southall. There was one in Acton, I believe, and one in Hounslow, but not actually in Southall. So they were asking us to come and protest against this meeting, which that's what the National Front do. They set up pre-election meetings in places they don't have a stronghold. It was just to absolutely cause mayhem. And I think, and it was almost, because of what happened, it was almost as the police punished the people of Southall in what happened later on with the Do you want me with the 700 people who were arrested, and then there were 348 people actually charged with offences?
Ms. Stubbs, you are very ably helping us with the details of that day, and you have very clearly set out a lot of that detail in your statement. So thank you. I think you were about to say, do you want me to carry on with the detail of those numbers? If I may just try and take it in slightly chronological stage, we can see there that there is a report that postdates the events, where the SWP were talking about it, and Tony Cliff obviously giving his opinion about where things had gone right or wrong. What I was hoping you might be able to shine some light on, if you can, from your recollections, is whether discussions took place before the 23rd of April as to either in SWP meetings or in any other group or branch meetings that you recall, about what activities were going to take place and what actions were going to take place by those who were going to attend.
No, we both heard of it through our unions. I worked in Islington, I was in Nalgo, and we heard of it through Nalgo, and Blair heard of it in Tower Hamlets through the NUT. So I don't remember any discussions. It was something that also the people of Southall had asked us to come to. And you know, some of the newspaper headings made it sound as though outsiders came and caused trouble. You know, Blair, after he was killed, was called a red and as labelled as so left-wing that it wasn't surprising he got killed.
Were you attending meetings of any political groups at that stage in 1979 before this event? Do you recall?
Yes, I would have been attending meetings of Hackney SWP. Yes, I don't have enormous memories, but yes, I would have been. But I certainly don't remember either of us hearing about it through SWP. It was really through our unions.
From what you understood before you attended the event, did you understand it was going to be widely attended, that high numbers of people were going to be attending this demonstration?
We hoped there would be, yes. We hoped that people would respond to what Southall had asked us.
And you gave us an insight in what you've just said. You have an extremely grave view of the policing tactics that were deployed and considered appropriate for that day and the conduct of police on the street on the 23rd of April.
Yes.
You, I think, and you deal with this at your paragraph 36 of your statement. You attended at a different time from Blair Peach. It was the school holidays, I think you'd said, and he was a teacher, so hadn't been at school that day, and you were at work, and so you'd arranged to meet him there.
Yes.
Can you
arrange to meet roundabout outside the town hall, but of course no one could get near the town hall.
So can you now tell us about that day, if the events aren't too difficult for you to recall?
Yes. No, I came with friends from work. There were about 6 or 7 of us, and we arrived in Southall, and the whole town was barricaded, and it was very, very difficult to get anywhere. And also, I'd actually never been to Southall before, and probably not many people had, and it was out of West London, and we lived in East London. I remember eventually getting round on the east side near Southall Park. I remember that quite vividly, because we were chased by police on horseback and also police on foot with truncheons chasing us and hitting people.
Did you manage to make it round to the side of the demonstration that you wanted to?
I then, I couldn't get near the town hall, but then I sort of went, just trying to think, sort of north and round some back streets and managed to get in to the Broadway, but then it was just absolutely, you know, there were sort of 10 rows of police and lots of demonstrators just surging around. And I think about 6 o'clock, I sort of managed, oh no, about 7 o'clock to get back to the station and go back to Hackney.
You'd obviously failed to meet up with
never met, no.
And was it later that evening, about 10 o'clock at night, that you received a call from your friend telling you?
Yes, she was at Ealing Hospital and phoned me and said I should come quickly because Blair had been hurt.
Miss Stubbs, you know and have now seen that, and we'll deal with the reports that flowed from the events that day, but amongst the reports that you've been shown, it includes the reporting from undercover police officers who attended the funeral of your partner that took place on the 13th of June, within a couple of months of those events.
Can I just say one thing which I wanted to say? Sorry. I just wanted to say that there was one officer who, there was only one report from one undercover officer about attending the 23rd of April demonstration. I did have his HN number, I can't find it. I think, I can't remember his number. I can try and find it for you in the break. In his report, which was very, very short, he said he'd gone to Southall, was horrified at the police, but he'd seen the violence against the police, and he left early before the incident with Blair. It was incredible. It was once again, I felt that he was distancing himself immediately from the person who'd been killed. And it just reminded me of, no, that's after. It later reminded me, you haven't come to that, but it later reminded me about the 6 police officers who were suspected, one of them whom killing Blair, that they, in their statements, I mean, in the Cass report, Cass says that they lied to him. They tried to say that the carrier which they were in, U11, stopped at the bottom of Broadway and Beechcroft. They didn't want to say that it stopped at the top of Beechcroft in the corner of Orchard, which is where Blair received the blow on the head, which killed him. And 2 of them changed their statements. And they also said there were other police present, which Cass had ruled out.
Ms. Stubbs, can I help you with your reference? I think, did you take that reference from the undercover policing from one of the sort of cumulative gists of?
It might have been, yes, I'm just thinking. I think it was the closed officer gist, the undercover.
So an officer whose name hasn't been able to be, whose cover name hasn't been able to.
Yes. And that was even more horrifying to me because, you know, with most of the undercover officers, at least we know their cover name. This man, we don't know his cover name, his real name, and not even his HN number, nothing.
And you feel that there are parallels in the way that that experience of that officer was reported on the 28th of April, and parallels with the way that the SPG officers, the Special Patrol Group officers, gave their evidence to the various investigations that took place, which you're right, we will come to. Thank you. You have seen then, as far as actual undercover reporting that you have seen, you know and are aware that there were undercover police officers present at your partner's funeral on the 13th of June, and that they provided a list of the vast numbers of names of people that attended on that occasion. And I think you've also seen in the report 3 reports where photographs had been taken of people that had been attending at the funeral. And I think you've commented in your statement, you find it very distressing, and you found it distressing when you learned of the fact that undercover police officers had been present at his funeral and photographs taken. Is that right?
Yes, it was HN 106, and he put in his statement that he attended the funeral because in case there'd be a risk of public disorder. I mean, I thought, what absolutely ludicrous statement. Blair Peach's mother, his aunt, his oldest brother and his wife and a cousin had all come from New Zealand for the funeral. There were 10,000 people at the funeral. They all came to pay their respects. He also said that it was to protect his undercover identity, which I think is really sickening if he has to do that. And also the list of attendees, I think I counted them. I think there were he listed 71 people. I mean, there were 10,000 people. Yes, and I'm afraid the 3 photographs I couldn't identify. I didn't know who they were.
Thank you. In terms then of events that flowed after the death of your partner, we can see that just looking at a few examples of the reporting that is in 1979 after the April date, we can see the real mobilizing of the feeling, the real sense of grievance against the police that this triggered in people, as well as support for you and your loss. And may I just now go through a few examples of the reports from 1979 in the aftermath of these events. Please, can we first of all turn to tab 4, which is report UCPI 502128, please.
(21218), I think.
Sorry, did I say that incorrectly? 21218. I apologise to the technicians. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Again, this was not a meeting, Ms. Stubbs, where you were present, but this is indicative of the mobilisation of the people in support of what you'd gone through and an outrage at the events. This is a report dated the 3rd of May 1979 about a meeting that had taken place on Monday the 30th of April 1979. I'm going to read from paragraph 3. The meeting was chaired by Privacy and began with a summary of the incidents during the past week at Southall given by Privacy, a teacher and member of Acton SWP. He stated that a temporary headquarters had been set up in Southall from which Privacy would be carrying out an investigation into the death of Blair Peach. And if we go down to paragraph 7, please, halfway down, right at the bottom of the page. I'll read from paragraph 7. 2 collection funds have been set up as a result of Blair Peach's death in Southall. One fund is for Peach's dependents and the other to pay the fines of those arrested during the anti-National Front demonstration on the 24th of April 1979. You can take that report down. Does that accord with your recollection, Ms. Stubbs, of what was taking place on the ground? People commissioning their own investigation into what had happened at Southall Town Hall. And so that temporary headquarters, almost like a military operation in itself, had been set up. And then in support of you, there was and others, there was a fund collection going on. Is that just an example of the strength of feeling that was taking place?
Yes, it was. I didn't really know about the setting up the headquarters. Certainly when we come on to the Friends of Blair Peach, I was more involved with them. Yes, the funds, yes, it was absolutely amazing because there's no legal aid for inquests, and our inquest cost £12,000 and they raised 20,000 in the first year for the Friends, so it was amazing.
Thank you. We'll see reference to the setting up very shortly of this group. Can I just look at the next report, tab 5, UCPI number 5021270. This was in the left-hand column. If we need to see it, we can check it, but it's clear from the context I'm about to read that this was a meeting of the Indian Workers Association in Southall, and this was the very vibrant association that you referred to earlier. Is that right, Ms. Stubbs?
Yes, it is.
This says that the undermentioned persons were among those who took part in the demonstration in Southall on the 28th of April 1979, organised by the Indian Workers Association and the Anti-Nazi League in protest at police actions during the anti-National Front demonstration in Southall on the 23rd of April, and in particular the death of Blair Peach. So another example of what was going on the ground and the strength of feeling and the actions that were being organised in the immediate aftermath of this event. Is that right?
Yes.
Can we have a look now at the next report, tab 6, UCPI 21297, please. And we can see in the left-hand side of that page of this report, by this time, which is the 30th of May 1979, the Friends of Blair Peach Committee had been established. So this is what you were referring to, I think, Ms. Stubbs, in terms of the action group being set up very quickly after the event. Is that right?
Yes.
We submitted herewith is a leaflet which has been received from a reliable source. The leaflet was issued by the Friends of Blair Peach Committee and seeks to highlight the circumstances which it maintains led to the death of Blair Peach at Southall on the 23rd of April 1979 during an anti-National Front demonstration. Number 2, it contains a list of activities necessary to widen the campaign, especially within the trade union movement, and is mainly the work of Privacy, who was with Peach at the time he received the injuries, which it is alleged caused his death. The officer reporting this information back on this report to the SDS, at paragraph 3 goes on to add, it is perhaps of interest to note that Privacy, a dedicated member of the Socialist Workers' Party and a close personal friend of Peach, is highly critical of the way the SWP Central Committee are handling the whole issue, and especially of the party's coverage of the Socialist Workers newspaper. and she has let it be known that she intends to rectify this situation by publicising the aims and the activities of the Friends of Blair Peach Committee. At every available opportunity, that line concludes. If we may go to the next page, we can see the leaflet, and I just wanted to confirm the objectives of the committee with you halfway down the page, Ms. Stubbs, if we can. If we scroll to the latter part, yes, second hole punch, we can see, albeit very faint type, we call on. Can we see those words, Ms. Stubbs? Are you able to see it and make it out a little?
Yes.
Better? Thank you very much. We call on our members to A, organise collections in their workplaces for the Blair Peach Memorial Fund. B, circulate the petition calling for a full public inquiry. C, secure the maximum attendance at the funeral ceremony. Further, we call on the national executive of our union to A, make a substantial donation to the Blair Peach Memorial Fund, B, affiliate to the National Anti-Nazi, to the Anti-Nazi League, C, give full support to the calls to disband the Special Patrol Group and to bring to justice those responsible for Blair Peach's death. Is that, were those the core aims, as you understood them to be, behind this group that had been set up as a result of the events on the 23rd of April, Ms. Stubbs?
Yes, I wasn't involved with the Friends immediately afterwards, but yes, I knew those were the core events. Although, are you going to, I mean, you know, so the things that are you going to go on to the things that they were asking us to do or asking people to do? It was things like to contact your MP, to write to the newspaper for a letter, to speak to your local radio station, well, and also to have meetings about.
I'm very happy to continue to read. This leaflet is itself evidence, and if you'd like to highlight a little bit more of this particular document, I'm very happy to do so, Ms. Stubbs. Yes. We can see, just as you were saying on that screen, just after the line that I'd finished reading, it was inviting a number of asterisk points, if you can see right there, as you were saying. Phone your local radio station, demand answers to the questions above, write to your local papers, arrange a street meeting, get copies of the petition and the collection sheet and distribute them widely. I can't work out the next word, but there's a reference to the writing to and the address for the fund. Get copies of the fact sheet sponsored by East London Teachers Association, and something to them to further your arguments from, and there's an address, write to your MP demanding his or her support for a public inquiry. I'm very happy to carry on to the next page to finish that list of actions, if we can do that. On the screen, it's just the next page of 4 more asterisk points. Thank you very much. Arrange pickets of suitable places in London. There have already been pickets of Scotland Yard, the Home Office and the Coroner's Court, and elsewhere in the country of local police stations. Get a speaker from the Anti-Nazi League or Friends of Blair Peach by contacting, and the information is given. Duplicate this sheet and spread the campaign, and get a stall at any trade union functions or community functions in your area to get the petition signed and collect money, etc. So it's a real mobilisation of the feeling of grievance that we are seeing in these reports that are being sent by SDS officers back to Special Branch. Is that right, Ms. Stubbs?
Yes.
We can see.
Also, you know, absolutely sort of before social media and smartphones, just the sort of things you did in the 70s, but nothing violent. There's no suggestion of violence.
Can I deal with two more reports that were all dated in 1979, just to help us understand how the activities were taking place. Tab 10 for your bundle, sir, and I think possibly yours, Ms. Stubbs, but the reference is UCPI 50211044. This is a report on the screen that we can see, dated the 16th of July, 1979, about a meeting that had taken place on the 5th of July. And it's a Socialist Workers' Party meeting, and this happens to be the Leytonstone, so Waltham Forest district of the Socialist Workers' Party that was holding this meeting. The meeting was entitled, as we can see in paragraph 2 of this report, as follows: police are the murderers, disband the special patrol group. And some 25 people had attended. At paragraph 4, if we can scroll down this report, please. I'll read from paragraph 4. Privacy, the only one of the invited speakers to attend, then delivered his talk. He maintained that the role of the police in any capitalist society was to protect the system at all costs, and police and the armed forces, although both of working class origin, must therefore be considered to be the repressive arm of the state. In his view, the dissolution of the SPG was just a small step on the road to a socialist revolution. But even so, its disbandment had to be aimed for in the light of the present public attitude towards the police following the death of Blair Peach. And the remainder of the speech was then adopted the usual line of a just society will only be achieved through socialism, and this is what we must all work for. So we're about to come on to the SPG, but this is this an indication of the strength of feeling and an indication of the national campaign that had been triggered to disband the special patrol group after the events of the 23rd of April?
Yes, yes, it was.
I just wanted to check if there was a reference in this report, but I think it's in the next report that we see a picket that had been arranged for the eve of the inquest. And so let's just go to that, please. Tab 11, and that's report UCPI 50-13468, please. Now I have a different reference here, but perhaps. Please, may I ask, in fact, for a different report to come up? And I apologise for giving the wrong reference. And I don't quite know how I've achieved that in my tabbing, do apologise. Can I ask for this report to come up on screen? UCPI 50-13435. I have that behind my tab 11, sir, and you may as well, Ms. Stubbs. But it's a report dated the 1st of October 1979. And if we can, it's a report about the Socialist Workers' Party again. And if we can just scroll to paragraph 5, please. on the 10th of October, reading from paragraph 5, on the 10th of October 1979, the eve of the Blair Peach inquest, a picket will be held outside Harlesden Police Station from 7:30 p.m. until 9:30 p.m. and Kilburn Police Station from 10 p.m. until 12 midnight. Yeah. The pickets will coincide with door-to-door leafleting in the area to complain about the proposed introduction of a special patrol group contingent into the Brent area. So this was an example, and it may well be that the report, the number of which I gave just a minute ago, was another example of the fact that many pickets had been arranged for the eve of the inquest that was set up to start at the coroner's court. Is that right?
Yes, it was the first inquest. Yes, and there were over 100 police stations. I think I said 50. There were over 100 police stations picketed outside. It was just a reminder and just for people who were still so angry about it to be able to express themselves.
And this was 6 months on. And if I may just pause there and see if I have the chronology right about the inquests and the various reports. Blair Peach had died on the 23rd of April 1979. Do I understand that there was the inquest was technically opened in the sort of pro forma way that it has to be on the 26th of April 1979?
Yes, that's when they just open and close, don't they? Just
yes.
Yeah. No, why I called it the first inquest? Oh, you must know, because the coroner refused to sit with a jury or to allow the CAS report. That's why we had to go for judicial review.
So
it was stopped.
If I may just try and elicit a chronology, and please correct me if I do have this wrong and add the extra detail, and then it may be the convenient moment to go for a break if we just get this chronology right, if I can. So the technical opening happened on the 26th of April 1979. Do we understand that there was then an internal investigation by Commander John Cass that had been triggered as a result of the Complaint Investigation Bureau that reported, well, the first of his reports was dated the 12th of July 1979.
Yes.
And then was it the case that the inquest formally opened in October 1979, as we saw referenced there, on presumably then the 11th of October, if the 10th was the eve? And did that inquest, chaired by John Burton, the coroner, was that did that inquest run from October 1979 to May 1980, when it eventually? No,
it was stopped the first day, but Cass submitted a second report in September, and the DPP in September, who was God, I know his name so well, it's gone out of my head. The DPP declared that there was no case to answer, no policeman would be charged, and this, having read the Cass report, which we weren't allowed, where it actually said that a policeman had killed Blair. We will go into that a bit more. But no, it had to be adjourned because we applied to go to the High Court.
So it began in October 1979. There was then a pause. And as you say, there were two aspects of the Cass report that had taken place before the start of that inquest.
That's right.
He first reported 12th of July 79, and then there was the 14th of September 79 additional update of the Cass report.
The report, yes.
Then the inquest opened in October 79.
Yeah, on the 11th.
On the 11th. It was then paused from what you tell us. And then ultimately, did it start again in April 1980 and conclude in May 1980?
Yes, I think it was the 29th or 28th of April it started.
And concluded in May.
Yes.
Some weeks later, May 1980. And there was a verdict recorded where a jury were involved of death by misadventure. as that.
We're going to come on to that, yes.
Well, yes, but as I understand, and what I wanted to make clear, I'm just trying to get the dates so that we can understand the chronology. You have in your statement in very clear terms set out, using extracts from the Cass report, the basis of why you are severely critical of the coroner's approach to that inquest, his assessment of the evidence and the verdict reached, aren't you?
Yes.
And it wasn't until the 27th of April 2010 that you received disclosure of that Cass report,
That's right.
which sets out a view of the evidence. Commander John, he was Commander John Cass, wasn't he?
Yes.
In the police force.
Yes.
In India. That Commander John Cass's view of the evidence regarding the SPG officers was, in your view, very much at odds with the coroner's view. That was expressed during the course of the 1980 concluded inquest. If I may, that might be a convenient moment for a break, and then we're going to look at one of the exhibits that you have provided for us.
Can I just mention something as you're going in chronological order that I forgot? And why maybe there was such high feeling about the Special Patrol Group. At the beginning of June, in Barnes Station in Special Patrol Group lockers, a whole lot of unauthorized weapons were found. And also at one of their homes, that was PC Bint, where they found Nazi regalia and also unauthorized weapons. And
was that part of the investigation that Commander Cass was leading?
Yes, and that was leaked to us. Yes, and my solicitor went and saw the weapons.
And so that was all part of his investigation, and he gathered evidence and heard from the officers, or heard or didn't, depending on who chose to give him evidence.
Yes,
that was all part of his investigation.
Yes, it was.
By the
yes, and I mean, one of the weapons was a long kosh with a piece of metal at one end.
I think you've given us a lot of, you've helped us with that detail in your statement.
Yes, but that was the, I think that added to the anger that people felt about the Special Patrol Group.
When you say that was leaked, did people know about that discovery then at the time in 1980?
Yes, it was June 79 that it was leaked, that it happened, and my solicitor went to view the weapons. It was, yes, just before Cass, the first part of his report was finished.
So that was widely known, what had been discovered in that?
Yes, absolutely, yes, it was in national newspapers, yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Stubbs. If that's a convenient moment, sir, for the break.
Certainly, we'll have a break, but may I ask by what time approximately, assuming we restart very shortly after 12, you anticipate finishing?
Well, sir, I have probably within about 20 minutes or so, I would say.
Okay, then we'll break for our usual quarter of an hour to let shorthand writers have a break.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning, everyone. We will now take a break. May I remind those in the virtual hearing room to join their breakout rooms, please. The time is now 11:50 a.m., so we shall reconvene at 12:05 p.m. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. I will now hand over to the Chairman to continue proceedings. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Wilkinson.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Stubbs, we had just concluded the chronology of the investigation and inquest dates. And as I said, that was in the context of a national campaign that had really captured quite a lot of attention in the year 1979 towards into 1980, all about disbanding the Special Patrol Group. That nationwide campaign, we get a flavour of in the and the basis for it. We get a flavour of in one of the exhibits that you provided for the inquiry's assistance, which we can pull up on screen, and is I think a book or a large, I think an article or book or magazine type document titled "The Blair Peach Case: License to Kill," which was written by David Ransom, who was part of the Friends of the Blair Peach Committee. Is that right?
Yes, and he was a teacher at the same school as Blair. Yes, it's a booklet, yes.
It's a booklet, thank you. That's the word I was looking for. UCP, we have this on our screens at UCPI 50/34077. And if we can turn to page 12 of that, please, for the technician's assistance. Thank you. If we look further down, halfway down the page, we can see that this part of the booklet is focusing on the Special Patrol Group. And if we start at the paragraph that begins "most of the attention," I'll read these two paragraphs here. Most of the attention since has focused on the SPG, which was involved in all the worst violence in Southall. The overall strategy of the police has been somewhat obscured. However, it is clear that, small as their numbers were, the SPG played a vital role in this overall strategy. And without them, such a strategy would probably never have been contemplated. Just pausing there, Ms. Stubbs, this is referring to the general policing that was deployed on the 23rd of April, isn't it?
Yes, is that Whitelaw again? Because I was really horrified at that first paragraph. I'd forgotten about that.
Yes, no, what
the very top, the little paragraph at the top.
Yes.
Where he said that more or less he deserved to be killed, didn't he?
Yes. This is a booklet written, as we identified, from a member of the Friends of Blair Peach Committee.
Yes, David.
So he is there setting out what he is now referring to here in this paragraph about, which is, I think, the police strategy. And of course, we must try and remember that the chairman in the inquiry here is focused on the undercover policing aspect of policing. Yes. And obviously, it's right to say that Commander Cass and indeed the coroner were focused on different things. But what this helps us with a little bit is the role that the SPG played as part of the overall policing, which would have included undercover policing on the day, and what the response was decided to be by the police on the 23rd of April. And that's what this booklet is focusing on from his perspective.
But there was one undercover policeman there, if we are to believe that we've got all the statements, and he was there for a couple of hours.
Yes, thank you. And that was that gives me an opportunity to remind ourselves that you're referring to the closed officer gist, if you remember. And that was a collection of all the closed officers' witness statements for Tranche 1, Phase 2, and that was collated down into a document that's been published. And it's from that that you get the information about the officer that was present. Is that right?
Yes, but it's in the singular, not the plural.
Yes, yes.
You're saying there's more. There's a whole bunch of officers saying that.
No, we're saying that there is that gist was
Yes.
created, as I understand it, by summarising the important aspects that could be published from a number of different officers' witness statements. And one of those officers, whose identity it's right to say you do not know, and you do not know their cover name, but one of those officers was able to contribute in the way that they did in their statement, and that's been put into open in the gist, which confirms that he was present, or he or she was present at on the 23rd of April, as you said, for a period, and then, as you've referred to, left.
But are you actually telling me there were more undercover officers at Southall?
I am referring to the fact that this information came from a gist of a collation.
Yeah, which is a bunch of them at Southall.
I have no doubt that if there was evidence that needed to be gisted to the plural, it would have been gisted in that way, Ms. Stubbs.
Okay, so just the one. Yes, that's why there wasn't really, well, maybe we'll come on to that, because something I don't know if it's appropriate now to speak about it.
Would it be now convenient, I think, to just, can we focus on the document that you've exhibited for our assistant?
Oh, yes, this David's book, yes.
If that's all right.
Okay.
For the time being. So what we were, and it's my fault because I distracted to talk about the fact that this was part of an overall policing strategy. And this particular paragraph is focusing on the SPG as part of that overall policing strategy. The second paragraph that I will read from, which is the penultimate on this page, is what David Ransom refers to him having found in the Observer on the 29th of April, published, he says here, Scotland Yard's own account of the SPG. It was the only specialist unit in the Metropolitan Police Force. Vacancies were generally oversubscribed, so that something like 50% of applicants failed on vetting. There was a 25% annual turnover, and a full tour lasted 3 years. A Scotland Yard spokesman emphasised that the SPG had no room in its ranks for the headstrong type or those who are liable to overreact to any difficult situation. And if we can move to...
Something's wrong there, isn't it? Because they are supposed to only be there 3 years, but the driver of Carrier U11 had been there something like 5 or 6 years.
Ms. Stubbs, let me help you, because I'm about to move to that next part in this booklet to highlight these particular features. If we can move to page 14 of this unique reference, please. In the paragraph that begins most seriously of all, which is just at the bottom of this page. Thank you. Most seriously of all, however, the inquest revealed that the purportedly rigorous controls over the SPG in reality had never existed at all. At least 7 of the SPG officers who gave evidence to the inquest had been there for more than 4 years, 1 for 8 years, and 2 virtually since the SPG was founded in 1965. One of these 2 was PC Chalky White, the magpie of Unit 1, and the driver of Uniform 11 in Southall on the 23rd of April 1979. And he'd been a member of one of the 4 SPG units dispatched to Anguilla in 1969.
I certainly got the number wrong, didn't I? He'd been there 14 years.
If I may then move to the final extract of this booklet that I'd like to highlight, which is on the next page, so page 15, and it'll be the last paragraph beginning the Sunday Times. And again, this is David Ransom's account of what he'd read. He tells that he publishes in this booklet in the Sunday Times of the 1st of June 1980. He refers here to an interview that had been published. He says, published the Sunday Times on the 1st of June 1980, published an interview with Inspector Alan Murray following his resignation from the police. Presumably, Murray intended this interview as a vindication of himself and of the SPG. It is all the more disquieting for that. He recounts how on the afternoon of the 23rd of April 1979, he had addressed Unit 1 about how the, quotes, loony left, unquote, were going to be present in Southall and how it promised to be a, quotes, tasty one, unquotes. He described the, quotes, elan, quotes, which I understand to mean enthusiasm, that had been built up in his unit, and how they had the habit of arriving on duty to the tune of the Dam Busters. The unit was proud to be known as, quotes, the Cowboys, end quotes. Another quote, when I was out with my unit, I was my own boss to a large extent, end quotes, said Murray. Quotes, before acting, I didn't have, can we move to the next page? Thank you. To ring up and say, Governor, do you think this is right? I followed my own experience to do what was expected. For my own part, Ms. Stubbs, I don't need to read any more because that gives a flavour of the perceived behaviour and indeed the account on the face of it given publicly by a former member of the SPG who was present on the 23rd of April. Is that right, Ms. Stubbs?
Yes.
Ultimately, as we know from the CAS report that was disclosed to you in 2010, and as we're summarised in the inquiry's opening, it's right to say the conclusion there was that the lethal blow, referring to the death of your partner, was almost certainly struck by a member of the MPS's SPG. Is that right?
Yes.
Ms. Stubbs, I'd like now to move on, if we can take that down, please, to anniversary events that took place after the events on the 23rd of April. Now, you explain in your statement that you have always found these to be difficult events, no doubt quite understandably. But do you also agree that they demonstrate the strength of feeling and the continued place in the public's mind that the events of the 23rd of April have held?
Yes, absolutely. Are you talking about, you're jumping way ahead to 1998, are you?
Well, no, I'm talking about anniversary events that started as quickly as the following year in 1980, and then we'll see in 1981. And that
when you said you find it particularly hard, that was something I said in 1998.
Yes.
Yes.
But, yes. Forgive me, you're right.
Yeah, sorry, you're on 1981. Yeah.
No doubt that it becomes increasingly difficult, as it must have been at the time as well. So if we were to look now at tab 27 in your bundle and that of the chairman, and we will see this report on our screen at UCPI 50020094.
I wasn't here, was I? No.
No, I don't think you were here.
No. Yeah.
What I'm trying to identify, or rather highlight here, is that it's not the case, it was the case, wasn't it, Ms. Stubbs, that these events have triggered, have not gone away, and the public's recollection of these events has not gone away, and the strength of feeling about what happened that day has not gone away.
No. Yeah. So.
And these are anniversary events that took place and that we certainly see in 1980 and 81, undercover police officers felt it important to report back to Special Branch.
Yeah, yes.
And if we therefore look at this report, which is dated the 18th of April 1980, we can see at paragraph 3(1), this being a meeting to do with the Socialist Workers' Party, that on the 23rd of April 1980, from 6 p.m. until 8 p.m. outside Harlesden Police Station, it was being announced that there was to be a mass picket will be held to commemorate the death of Blair Peach, organised by the North West London SWP.
Yes.
This will be attended by about 40 persons. A similar picket will be held outside Kilburn Police Station. This will be attended by about 30 persons from 5 p.m. until 7 p.m. on the same day, organised by the Kilburn Anti-Nazi League.
Yes.
Also a picket on the same evening to take place outside Barnet Police Station, organised by Finchley SWP, and this will be attended by about 20 persons. And we can see that those police stations were not alone. If we just have a look at one more report at this time, behind tab 28, this is report UCPI 50-13891. Where we can see, if we can see the list of police stations in their entirety. This report shows us that it was known that the following police stations in the Metropolitan Police District will be picketed by members of the SWP who are protesting about the death of Blair Peach and calling for the disbandment of the Special Patrol Group.
Yes.
So, and this was 16 police stations, if we just look down the full list that we're going to have for
Yes.
a number of hours that evening, pickets outside them. And this was a year on from the events, and this was the level of activity and the strength of feeling that was being shown. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Can we see a year on after that for the second anniversary? If we move to tab 37, report number UCPI 50-16434. Again, just an example of a different campaign. This is the Right to Work campaign, and this is just an indication of the fact that here is their plan in February for an event that was going to take place a couple of months later. So we see this report back from the SDS to Special Branch has attached a leaflet outlining the future events planned by the South East London Right to Work campaign, including a picket of Eltham Police Station on Thursday, the 23rd of April, 1981, the second anniversary of the death of Blair Peach.
Yes.
Tab 47, please, from in your bundle. Do I mean tab 47? Yes. Yes, I do. This is on the screen, MPS 0001219. And here we are going into, we're obviously jumping a number of years now, Ms. Stubbs, because we're looking at the 20th anniversary. So this is a report, as we can see, dated in 1998. And I just wanted to, what I'm here trying to highlight is the fact that the events that took place in 1979 have remained a feature in people's minds that has mobilized a continuing strong feeling about the events that day and the tragic situation that befell your partner. And here, what we're looking at, and it's unusual, Ms. Stubbs, this type of report demonstrates a large shift in the style of the reporting, because we see here a title and an intelligence subject. On the page, we see touchy subject, which is itself a code name of the reporting officer, which I think information has reached you, Ms. Stubbs, that's what that means. It doesn't mean that the content that's being discussed is itself a touchy subject.
This was at a meeting of the Colin Roach Centre,
Yes.
and the undercover officer was Mark Cassidy, who'd infiltrated our group and was there for 5 years and had a relationship with a woman there, which caused her terrible distress when she found out who he was.
That's correct.
I think there's about 6 different files on where he's spied on us in great detail. He seems to be not particularly truthful. It wasn't that I always found it quite difficult at anniversaries and to keep on, having anniversaries, although I still felt really honoured that so many people still remembered Blair and wanted to remember him. But also the last paragraph there, suddenly it said potential for disorder. I mean, we'd had remembrance demonstrations after 5 years, after 10 years, and this was 20 years. There'd never been any disorder. I don't know why he put that. I think it's pretty unpleasant. Suddenly he's putting something which no one's made that statement about what we did, the Friends of Blair Peach, and continuing on.
Ms. Stubbs, might I just read the content into the record so that those that are following on
Yes.
that aren't able to look at the screen can follow the text in the transcript. This is a report dated the 28th of July 1998. And it says that April 1999 represents the 20th anniversary of the death of Blair Peach in Southall during an anti-Nazi demonstration. To help commemorate this event, local trade unions are organising a large rally and demonstration, which will be presented with a strong anti-racist, anti-police flavour. The temporary organising committee have approached Celia Stubbs, Peach's ex-girlfriend, to help promote the event, which she has reluctantly agreed to do. And there's a comment from the source, who we know to be touchy subject. And as you've identified, that's the code name for the officer you've referred to. The event will inevitably attract a left-wing presence with particular accent on anti-police type groups, and the potential for disorder will be significant. And you've explained your views about this report and your reference there to reluctance on your part, and you've explained what that meant. May I, in just keeping in terms of the fact that this continues to be remembered, then deal with the fact that the 40th anniversary commemorated Blair Peach in a slightly different way, or as well as marches and demonstrations. And is it right, and you help us with in your statement at paragraph 23, to say that in fact the system of blue plaques, I think now run by English Heritage, on the 40th anniversary of his death, placed on the outside wall of Southall Town Hall a blue plaque, and that scheme is designed to honour notable men and women, and that is how that was the events of the 23rd of April were remembered on the 40th anniversary in 2019. Is that right?
Yes, and also plaque for Gurdit Singh Chagar, the young man who was murdered by white racists in 1976.
Thank you. Might I now deal with, just to cover the reports that you have in your pack for this tranche, and put them into a little bit of context about other work that you and the Friends of Blair Peach Committee were involved in to support other justice campaigns. Can we just look now at 3 reports? First, behind tab 34, and that's UCPI 14149. Sorry, I didn't say the 5 zeros. Forgive me. UCPI 5014149. I apologise. This is a report about the Friends of Blair Peach in July 1980. And I'll just read from paragraph 2. The Friends of Blair Peach Committee are at present attempting to form a national coordinating body with other such committees concerned with the cases of state brutality by the police and prison authorities. So we can see there the efforts and coordination of this particular committee with other groups. We can, reading on, it says committees concerned would include the Richard Cartoon Campbell campaign and the Jimmy Kelly campaign. They feel that the move would widen the political arguments behind the alleged brutality and increase publicity for any new incidents that might occur. So, and if we look at the next 2 reports as well, can we see?
Can I just say something about that?
Yes.
Is that all right? Yes, this was a meeting. That's right, with Jimmy Kelly campaign and Richard Campbell. I think there were quite, at that stage, there were 4 other campaigns that we got to know, all pursuing miscarriages of justice. And we felt if we pooled our resources and knowledge, we could support each other. The Jimmy Kelly campaign, which this was the first time it came to the notice of undercover officers. That was Jimmy Kelly was coming home from the pub where he'd been having a drink with his brother who was on holiday from Australia, and he was attacked and beaten up by police officers who took him to a police station in Liverpool where he lived, and he died in the police station. Richard Campbell was a young black Rastafarian, only 19 years old.
And so the committee, the Friends of Blair Peach Committee, was aligning itself.
Sorry, I didn't. I was just pausing.
Oh, my fault. I apologise.
That's all right. He was treated. He was in Ashford Prison, which is now Feltham Young Offenders. He was on a charge with I think it was breaking a shop window, which he denied. He was in there. He was fine at first. He ended up being force fed, and he died on his own in Ashford. Then there was a Little Towers campaign. He was a nightclub in Newcastle. He was beaten up by 8 police officers, and he died 3 weeks later. And the 5th campaign was Matthew O'Hara, who was a member of the Mental Patients Union in Hackney and did a lot of work. He had mental health problems, and he was taken to Pentonville prison because he refused to pay a fine. He wasn't treated for his diabetes, and had to be taken to hospital. He also said he was kicked in the stomach by a prison officer, and he died in his flat 3 weeks later. And really, that was us getting together. We felt there was so much we could share. We could support each other. We could look at inquest reform and the importance of having parliamentarians on our side, support each other at demonstrations, at meetings, and start sharing knowledge. And we hoped in a year or two to be able to employ caseworkers who might be able to support the family at inquest, which that was campaigning for inquest reform and the ability to get legal aid.
And that's
I don't understand why we were spied on.
And that's why you were, that's the reference, and I'm trying to highlight the work of the committee and your work that features in these reports, and your alignment with other justice campaigns. Yes. And you've just given us some obviously very difficult for you to express that you felt very keenly about these other justice campaigns that you were aligned with. Yes. Might I just deal with one more example, bringing us quite up to much more up-to-date times, as perhaps the last of the reports to deal with. That's MPS 00010707, please. Now, this may not have found its way into your hard copy bundle, so we may have to just deal with this on the screen, Stubbs. Yes. And this is 1999, and this was a report titled Public Order Implications Following Publication of the Lawrence Inquiry Report and Other Events. And if I might scroll down a few paragraphs to a paragraph, I think it begins the monitoring group. Thank you. And we can see here that what's being reported back is the monitoring group, which is organising the Blair Peach demonstration, 20th anniversary of his death on the 24th of April 1999, will be viewed as being synonymous with the Lawrence death and will therefore unite all of the disparate groups under one banner. Suresh Grover, who is the organiser of this event, will positively contribute to ensuring that the day passes off without disorder. However, given the large numbers of groups and individuals who are likely to attend this march, the potential for disorder is high. And that's what the officer's view was, that he recorded and wrote back in his report. But is this, as far as your bundle for this tranche is concerned, is this another example of alignment of the same feelings that you were just expressing there about justice campaigns and your support for them? And do I take it that your view remains the same, that you don't consider this to be an appropriate use of undercover policing?
Well, I certainly disagree with potential for disorder is high, because I think, as I said before, that no remembrance marches for Blair ever had any disorder. There was no disorder. And, you know, the groups and individuals, they still wanted to remember Blair, yes.
Thank you. Can we take this down? Ms. Stubbs, thank you very much for going through the events as clearly and in the chronological way that we've tried to take things through this morning. I've finished the questions that I wanted to highlight. As I say, your clear statement and all the detail that you set out in there about matters that you feel very keenly about is before the chairman and before the public, published on the website with your exhibits and all the detail for people to know about and consider in detail. So that would conclude the questions that I have today. I don't know if this is the convenient moment for a break to see if there's any other further matters that need to be aired.
Could I say something before? Is that appropriate?
Forgive me a moment, please.
Sorry.
I was just about to ask whether there was anything you wanted to say before we have a break.
Thank
Now to do, please take this opportunity.
you. Thank you very much. Sorry. Sorry. The police, the Metropolitan Police annual report into Southall, they said that it was the most significant event of that year, Southall and Blair's death. Yet there isn't a single report except for that gist that was mentioned, that I mentioned earlier. There's and no one admitting any knowledge of the events. I think the same was in Red Lion Square, where Kevin Gately was killed. I believe there was HN 301 was there, but there's no, his evidence wasn't given to Scarman, and there was nothing written about that. The contrast between these two and what happened at Lewisham in 1977 is so glaring, and that's why I wanted to mention it. There were 18 undercover officers at Lewisham and over 50 pages of reports, and yet no one was dead, no one was killed. But in the other two demonstrations, somebody was killed at each of the demonstrations, and it makes me think that the police didn't want to be associated with deaths. They didn't want to. They just didn't want to be close to it. They didn't want anything to do with it. So, and that's what makes me feel that we haven't. I can't believe that there aren't statements because of because of Lewisham. It just doesn't make sense. It feels like yet another cover up and another boulder and another, once again, not feeling that you're being heard. Also, I just wanted to mention that about HN126, I was told that his statement was pertinent to my being spied upon. In fact, there's absolutely nothing in his statement that that involves me, except when on the 12th of June 1979, he said he went with the SWP members of the branch he'd infiltrated to view Blair laid in state at the Dominion Cinema in Southall. He said he only went because it would have looked bad for him if he hadn't and might have disturbed his undercover. But he then immediately after that said in his statement, I never had anything to do with the family or friends of Blair Peach. And that seemed to me that, why did he make that remark? It seems as though he quickly wanted to distance himself from that. There must be something, why was I told that his statement was pertinent to my being spied on? It caused me awful anxiety, actually, although it was totally evasive when I read it. Core participants they're fighting injustice in a climate where we're vilified by authority and we've been targeted. We don't know why we've been targeted. I just hope this inquiry, will protect core participants, and that, when you come to write your report, that this will be foremost in your mind. I mean, Blair was killed by police officers, and our feelings in campaigns was we were criminalized. The police, I think, wanted to keep ahead, wanted to keep ahead of our campaign, so that Blair's killers, we were never able to hold them to account. I and I'm sure many other court participants, well, I know the ones I've listened to have all feel really violated, as I do. I think that's all I want to say.
Thank you. Would you bear with me, please, and wait for 15 minutes while there may be questions that Ms. Wilkinson is going to be asked to ask you, and perhaps Mr. Ryder will have questions of you as well, and we'll come back in 15 minutes to deal with those.
Thank you, that's fine.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. We will now take a break. May I remind those in the virtual hearing room to remember to join your breakout rooms, please. The time is 12:45 p.m, so we shall reconvene at 1 p.m. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. I will now hand over to the chairman to continue proceedings. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Wilkinson, I understand there are no questions asked, which you're going to be asked to ask Ms. Stubbs at this stage.
That's correct. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Ryder, do you have any re-examination?
No, thank you, sir.
Ms. Stubbs, thank you for taking the time and trouble to prepare your witness statement and to attend to give the oral evidence which you've given to me about events that began 42 years ago. Very grateful to you. Thank you. Today's proceedings are now closed.
Thank you, everyone. The hearings have now finished for the day. We shall resume at 10 a.m. tomorrow.